Hello, welcome to Post Colonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and today I will briefly talk to you about how to write an academic book proposal. Now, I've had this write-up on my website for the longest time, but I thought if I could explain it through a video, maybe it would be more useful to you. Now, before you view the sample book proposal that I have, please do keep in mind that every academic publisher has their own specific format, and it is, of course, better to follow their format. But academic publishing also is way different from commercial publishing or publishing fiction. So the most important way of learning how to approach a publisher is to follow the exact process, and I have a video on it which I will post a link up there and also in the description. Please do watch it, and that one explains the process from beginning till the end of how to approach a publisher and eventually publish an academic book. Now for this one, I have used one of my own successful book proposals, and I will go part by part as to what is included in a usual book proposal. So let's take a look at it. And it's also available on my website in the written form, so I will obviously post a link in the description. Now, the first part of a book proposal is always the general information about the book which the publishers need. So what you need to give them is a proposed title, what possibly would be the length of your book. And this is one thing that they're really interested in, and that is the possible completion date. Okay, now do keep in mind that this can be changed, but they would like to see, if you have not finished the manuscript already and are pre-proposing a book, what is the likely date on which you can have a finished manuscript. And next part usually is the brief description of the book. Now, remember, this brief description is also what they will use with some revisions in your blurb. Like, let's say if they accept your book, this is the brief description that will show up on Amazon, on the publisher website, and most probably on the back of your book cover. So give it sufficient time and make sure that it's grammatically correct, but that it says what the book is about. That's the most important thing. And this brief description is what an editor would first look at. So make sure that it's impeccable in its grammar, but also it says exactly what your book is about in less than, I would say, less than 100 words, I will say. And the next section, usually always in all book proposals, is the longer scholarly rationale. Now, this is where you explain, what is your main thesis in the book? Why is it necessary to write a book about it? And how are you going to go about improving your point? And if you're building on someone else's argument, how are you building on it or refuting it? That's really important. Now, please keep in mind that the language of this book proposal throughout, regardless of the fact that it's on a highly specialized academic topic, need to be accessible to an editor who may not be an expert in the specific field. So avoid using big words like jargon and like deeply complex theoretical words. Make sure that it is accessible, because what you're trying to convey to the editor is, here, this is my idea, this is the reason this book is important, and I would like to write about it in this particular way, and here is my reason for it. Here is the significance of this idea. So that's what you cover in the scholarly rationale of the book, right? And the next part usually that all publishers ask is, the content question. Is it going to have illustrations or no? Mostly for academic books, it's no. If you're planning to add illustrations, just mention them here. And then you can mention there whether you can obtain the copyright, whether you hold the copyright or not, and how many numbers of illustrations would you like to have. And then is the next important part of your book proposal, and those are your chapter outlines. Now, what the chapter outlines give the editor is breakdown of your book, chapter by chapter. And you don't have a lot of room to say a lot of stuff there, but generally speaking, what is the general idea of your chapter? What are you discussing in it? And how are you arguing your point? These are some of the things which each chapter description must have, right? And so make sure that all the proposed chapters have a description there, right? Okay, so then we move on to the next important thing. Now remember, publishers are businesses, right? At the end of the day, yeah, they might like to publish a good book, but they want to know who your audience is, right? And that is where you can tell them, all right, this book would appeal to serious academics, graduate students, could be adopted as an undergraduate text, or could also be popular for popular audiences. This is where you tell them, you don't have to, lie or no, but you honestly tell them what all constituencies could possibly become your readership. So in I always mention, because my books are so hybrid, that they will appeal to humanities scholars and students, but also will appeal to people in social sciences. And in my case, since I'm originally from Pakistan, I have a huge audience there. So I always tell my publisher that the book will also have an international audience of readers. But that's the question you address over here. And then is another important thing, competing and related books. Now, don't leave it blank. Your publisher knows that no book is produced in a vacuum. Here I was a bit brief, but what you can also do is you can give a list of competing and related books, and then under each book you can explain what your book adds to that book. How is it different from that book? What aspects that particular book doesn't cover but yours does. So in that sense, you're giving them, here are the texts that my book will be competing with, which are already published, but this is how this book builds on that or fills a gap or addresses some of the issues that were broached in that book but not really explained, but which my book explains better. So do not leave it blank, but also build on a little on under each book and relate the content of your book to it. And then most publishers will at the end ask you to give a brief, bio of yours. Now, here's one thing I've noticed from some constituencies. People have this tendency to write really long bios. It's called a brief bio, right? Maximum, like 100 words, right? Just tell them who you are, what you do, what your area of expertise is, and what have you published previously, right? Don't use superlatives about yourself or all those things. They might work in the business world, but in a serious academic book proposal, they come across like as excessive padding. So roughly speaking, these are generally some of the headings that each publisher would want you to cover. Basic information about the text, brief description of the text, then a longer scholarly rationale, which explains why the book is necessary, why are you writing it, chapter outlines that are very important, right? Then possible readership of the book, who will read it, who will adopt it, and competing books with your insertion there as to how your book either augments that or challenges the previous books. How does it fill that gap? And finally, maybe your author, by. So roughly, I mean, this is not like how every publisher wants a book proposal, but this roughly is the format in which a book proposal is written. It doesn't have to be more than 3 pages long, right? And then make sure that when you are proposing to a specific academic publisher, you go to their website, you find out who is the editor. You follow the process that I explained in my previous video, right? And after a proposal has been asked, after they request a book proposal, right, then see if they have a specific format on their website. If they do, I can promise you some of these things will be included in it. And then prepare your book proposal according to that format. So these were some of my thoughts, and I've just shared with you one of my own successful book proposals. I hope it is helpful. I will post the link to this entry on my website in the description. And if you have any questions, anything that I might have missed, anything that you would like me to explain more, please do let me know, and I'll be happy to reply to that. Meanwhile, good luck with your writing, and good luck with writing your book proposals and publishing your scholarly and academic books. Stay safe, take care, and I will see you next time. And as always, peace and love.